Hello everybody. So by popular demand, I am going to cover Enphase. A former channel darling was down a lot yesterday because of some tax bill in the Senate, heading to the Senate. Anyways, Kathy Wood has still a duck to keep her humble. I have Enphase to keep me humble, right? It's like not all stocks win, and unfortunately Enphase is one of my big losers. It's not an enormous loss, but I lost roughly 50% on my Enphase investment. Folks, it's okay to have losses, right? One single 10x can pay for a lot of wrong picks. MicroStrategy is like a 13x still to this day, despite MicroStrategy dropping for me. What is it dropping? I don't know. It's like down 7% or something. It's like HIMS at $50. That's almost a 10x. So the point is, it's like essentially, if you have one stock that does a 10x, and you have equal positions in 10 stocks, your one stock who does a 10x can pay for 9 stocks where you're wrong. And so I'm perfectly fine to say that I was wrong on Enphase. And now, of course, it's all about what to do, because I still like Enphase a lot. Like the value prop is stunning in my view for Enphase. Yes, solar is a revolution that is going to happen. It's a technological revolution. It's a boom and bust cycle. It's been in a valley of despair before. You may remember 2012, 2013, 2014 valley of despair. We're entering another valley of despair. The question is, when are we going to get out of that valley of despair and back to all-time highs again? That's kind of the way I view solar. And solar moves in, I don't know, is it a 10-year cycle? Is it a 15-year cycle? Maybe a 7-year cycle? Anyways, the point is, let's talk about Enphase. Let's see what's going on today. First of all, I'm going to begin with the end, which is when I sold Enphase and when I stopped really covering the stock on this channel was December 27. I made a full video, 15-minute video. That was one of my most straightforward videos I ever made on Enphase, actually, as to why I was done with Enphase, and I sold Enphase at $73 at $73. And the reason why I sold it then, of course, is because I needed tax loss. I needed some tax loss harvesting because I wasn't happy paying too much taxes. So I needed tax loss harvesting, and Enphase was unfortunately my best candidate for tax loss harvesting. So that's why I sold it. But I sold it knowing full well that the story had moved from an obviously bullish story to a too hard story. And it is still a too hard story for me. There's some headwinds that are really bad, but also really midterm, like they're not that long, those headwinds. And then you have the tailwinds that are long-tailed. The tailwinds are really 2030 and beyond is when all the tailwinds are going to kick in. So this stock now is kind of in a valley of despair. But, when I look at the balance sheet, I don't think this is a stock that's going bankrupt anytime soon. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation in the industry. I hope they're focusing on the IQ9s. I hope they're focusing on GaN microinverters and gallium nitride and building new products for the next bull, which is eventually going to come, in my view. And you can see in my video where I exited, I was talking about the tax credit being in jeopardy, and Grok seemed to think that the tax credit, the residential solar tax credit, was going to go away. I had no take on this. My take was, and is still the same, is that the manufacturing incentives are not going to be going away. And this is not a discussion we're having right now on the manufacturing incentives. This is the tax credit seemingly going away. So the stock was down enormously yesterday. I can't remember how much it was on. Was it like 20% or something? The stock was down enormously yesterday because the credit, the tax credit, is going away. The 30% tax credit on an install is going away. That's not good. And a lot of wealthy folks were taking advantage of the tax credit. You want to reduce your taxes, well, just put solar on the roof, right? A lot of wealthy folks were taking advantage of that. And so that's not good. And so who says Trump's dropping taxes, right? He's increasing taxes on a few things. He's clearly increasing taxes on that. If you're planning on getting solar, this is a clear tax increase on you. Anyways, this makes it worse. But guess what? A lot of folks We're not getting solar anyways right now because of interest rates, right? Mortgages are heading back above 8%. I have very little doubt about that. Real estate is dead right now. Like who's putting a $50,000 solar roof on right now when you have to get it financed at personal rate type rates, which so you're gonna be at 11 or 12% with an $800 credit score if you want to finance solar roofs. So the sales were not happening anyways in the US because of the interest rates. So it's bad. It's worse. It went from bad to worse. But again, the short term is a problem for this stock. What is good though? What is good is that the 11 cents per watt AC is not going away from the IRA credit, at least to the best that I can find. And we know that Enphase makes a lot of money from that 11 cents per watt AC. They have a strong incentive to increase the watt AC age of the inverters. They want to increase that watt AC, and so that's why I want to see GaN be a priority for this company, because that means that these inverters, you're going to move into 500 watt AC inverters, or 480 watt, I think was the latest they released. I don't follow the stock too closely anymore. But what if you have a 600 watt AC inverter like a year and a half from now, and the incentives are still there? Then Enphase is just going to be printing cash, because all of a sudden you do 600 watt AC times 11 cents, and that covers almost entirely the cost of the manufacturing. If that were to go away, that would be a big issue for the money of this company, for cash flow of this company. As Mandy used to say on the call, IRS direct pay is how they get the money. So the USA could very well be an export hub for the world when it comes to the microinverters, because these incentives are absolutely stunning. And of course, China is supporting its solar industry. Why wouldn't the US support its solar industry? So I don't see the manufacturing incentives going away. And I think the story of potentially being the export hub for the world for microinverters, Enphase being that main export player, I think that story is still in play. If we don't get tariffed, right? If the US gets tariffed by the EU, then you see why I call it a too hard story right now. It's a too hard story. Like, the news of the day, of course, stocks are dumping today because of a 50% tariff apparently that's going on in the EU on June 1st. I'll wait until I see it, right? Because we know that Trump is all about talk, but I could be wrong here. I have no way of this is edited. So this is once again something that is too hard. So let's go for headwinds. Let's go for tailwinds. So the headwinds, the biggest headwind of them all is the interest rates for Enphase. It makes no doubt in my mind. The Fed chief, and I know there's a lot of Fed lovers who somehow make their way to my video, so I'm just going to be nice. But he's determined to tank the housing market. This is kind of the only explanation that I have. I don't really know. But when I look at the Fed Watch tool, now we're looking at September potentially for a rate cut. But even the odds of September are not looking good. So, I'm tired. It's been years that I watch this Fed Watch tool who predicts rate cuts, and they never happen. So my new thought on the rate cuts, is that they're going to happen after May 15, 2026, when a new chair is nominated by Trump. And who do you think Trump's going to pick as the new chair? He's going to pick what I'm going to refer to as an epically dovish Fed chair. So our liberation day, in my view, as far as the interest rates go, is when Powell goes. When Powell goes, interest rates will go down. So we have another year, exactly another year to wait until interest rates being down. So that headwind is going to remain in my view. And even if we get a cut, what kind of cut are we going to get? 0.25 basis points? Anyways, they can keep the rates high, and they can hurt the real economy, while on the same end as they started doing just buying government bonds, which is like stealthily. They've been doing stealth QE for a little while, and they're buying government bonds on the same end. So they're bailing out the government, but tanking the real economy by keeping the rates high. Anyways, I know I'm opinionated on the Fed. You don't need to agree with me. That's fine. Headwinds. Let's continue on the headwinds. Tax credit uncertainty. That's going to be a big headwind. You know what? Let's rip off the Band-Aid. Let's remove the tax credit. We're good. Because it doesn't change anything. So let's rip off the Band-Aid, and then the stock won't be trading on that. tariff uncertainty, a little bit of tariff uncertainty, especially as Enphase has made a lot of investments to manufacture things in the US. And imagine if then we manufacture in the US, but other countries tariff Enphase. It's like, okay, that's very problematic. And this is where, of course, Jack Ma's view of the two world, two system, where and Tesla does it even better, right? Tesla's in China. Tesla's in Germany, so in the EU, and then Tesla's in the US. So they got the regions covered with their factories in the region, and so they don't get tariffed, right? And so if they want to go to India, if Tesla wants to go to India one day, they'll probably do a plant in India. That's like how you have to do it. But anyways, that's a headwind, the tariff uncertainty, because they do have manufacturing operations abroad, but it's still something to manage for them, because it's a better plan to manufacture things in the US than to send it abroad, because you get that incentive. Then, moving on to another headwind, Tesla is stronger than ever. And of course, it's because of the AI business, the main business, but as a result of that, it means that they are able to essentially price the Powerwall free in a very compelling way. And unfortunately for Enphase, I think the Powerwall free, even though it's not the best technical innovation in my view, it is a true marketing innovation. It is an art of war type of marketing, because the Powerwall free comes with a free hybrid inverter. They took it halfway, where they have between 3 and 6 strings, so it's not a single string inverter, but they still have strings like a microinverter, right? So it's not as good as a microinverter, but it's not as bad as a string inverter in the way they designed it, and they throw it in for free with the battery, for free. So if they throw it in for free with the battery, then what you would have to, most people who are going to buy the Powerwall, they are also going to use the hybrid inverter that they just paid for. So it's a marketing innovation that I think could hurt Enphase. Now the question is, how much executive attention is the Powerwall gonna get at Tesla? Can you get them? Every new wave of Powerwall, there was issues with people trying to get them and they couldn't get them, etc., etc. You could also talk about the discussion: is the Powerwall still a status symbol because it sticks out of your house and it has a big Tesla logo? The Powerwall, my understanding is it used to be a status symbol. If the narrative around Tesla, the Tesla bad narrative that a lot of people have, if that narrative is out there, then maybe people don't want to get a Powerwall. And maybe they don't want to get a Powerwall because of, vandalism or something like that. So I don't know. But I think Tesla has a strong product from a marketing standpoint, and they're going to take some business away from Enphase, is the way I look at it. But the tailwinds, as far as count goes, they greatly outweigh the headwinds. There's more tailwinds than headwinds for Enphase. But the problem is, you gotta be able to look beyond 2026, 2027 for these tailwinds to materialize. And so that's why the stock is dumping, because you gotta wait 2 years to see those tailwinds to materialize. So, my opinion, another opinion piece, right? Another opinion part of the video. And when Enphase was a hot stock, this is something that used to be always debated. Microinverters, are they the better solution? Are they the superior tech? In my view, they are the superior tech. Really quickly, why are they the superior tech? They're light, they can be printed en masse in factories in the United States, fully automated. They're semiconductors. You just have PCBs going through the machine puts all of the components, and then it seals it into a case, and then it goes straight into a cardboard box, and boom, you just printed a $180 inverter that costs you like, I don't know, $50 or $60 to make, and on top of that, you get, I don't know, $40 or $45 of tax incentive. So the margin's great, and you just print it en masse, and you can just ramp. They're kind of manufactured like smartphone chargers. There's a lot of similarity with smartphone chargers. If you ever bought a gallium nitride smartphone charger, you will understand the revolution that is coming to power electronics. There's a small revolution coming to power electronics, and I don't think the future is going to be bulky transformers, heavy string inverters. A lot of installers, they don't like the string inverters because a string inverter is a two-man crew. Right? Because you got to load it on the wall. Now, then you could say, with the battery, it's changing a little bit where you need to have a two-man crew anyways because the batteries are heavy. But still, inverters, of course, don't have a single point of failure. That's not true of string inverters. they last 2x longer. Why do they last 2x longer? Because they're designed as consumer electronics rather than appliances that need to be repaired. And they shut off at the panel level, which is now mandated in most places around the world by firefighting departments. Firefighters have mandated that in most cities around the world, where the electricity needs to be shut off at the panel level. And so there's an issue with string inverters, and that's something, I don't deep dive into this, but that's something the Powerwall is going to have to deal with too. Is you need to have a shut off at the panel level, so you have a redundancy when you don't use a microinverter. You have to use an optimizer at the panel level. You have to use a shut off at the panel level, or you have to have the panel maker include that shut off in the panel somehow. So you have a redundancy at the panel level. You don't have that redundancy with microinverters, because the inversion is happening in this teeny tiny box, right? This box that I have right here, this teeny tiny box that is stuck behind the solar panel. That's when the inversion is happening, and then you work with DC around, with AC around the house, right? It's the panel, the electricity comes out straight AC, and the AC goes through the house. It's very easy to find electricians who know how to work with AC. Finding electricians who know how to work with DC, you gotta train them. Anyways, there's a lot of... it's a complex story. That's why it belongs to the two-heart pile. This is a complex story. The tailwinds. Of course, the tailwinds is international. There's a big market in Europe Enphase is going after. There's India that Enphase is going after. Badri has ties to India, right? There was this picture of him at an India summit, etc. There's Latin America. Brazil is a big market for them. But the market still treats Enphase like almost just a California story. Now it seems to be treating Enphase as just a USA story. So that's a major upgrade, because for the longest time this stock was trading on NEM-free and California policy. Okay, now we're trading on USA policy. At some point we'll be trading on world policy, but we're not just yet. So the market still thinks it's just a US only stock. Okay, another thing which could unfortunately help is of course the bankruptcies have started in that space. There's been a lot of bankruptcies, especially at the installer level, but some bigger companies have had some bankruptcies, right? So if you look at SolarEdge has had, for example, and SolarEdge, of course, was the arch enemy of Enphase for the longest time. Well, they've had a much more precipitous drop than Enphase, and in fact, Enphase, anybody who bought Enphase between 2015 and 2020 is still in the money on Enphase. Okay, well, you're not, you're not up at 20x anymore, but you're still up like a 4 or 5x. Anyways, that's the point. Unfortunately for me, I got into Enphase right around the IRA time. Not exactly, but my cost basis was higher for me. This was a later stock I added to the portfolio, unfortunately for me. But it's like you couldn't have known you couldn't have known where this was headed. Like it could have gone another way. Remember that this stock a lot of people bought at the time when the Fed chair, which I think is the biggest headwind of this stock, when the Fed chair, Jay Powell, will say, we're not thinking about raising rates. We're not even thinking about raising rates. And then you do a 180 in a matter of a few months, and you do the biggest rate hikes in the history of rate hikes, in the history of the US. So trading on information is tough sometimes. And that's when my exit video, this is what I discussed in my exit video. I was like, I think the mistake that I made with Enphase is I bought a stock where a single decision maker can change the story. When a single decision maker can change the story, in this case that was the head of the Fed, that's a riskier stock to buy, and I'm paying attention to that now. That's why I love a stock like HIMS so much, because HIMS, there's not the insurer is not the decision maker, the government's not the decision maker, interest rate is not the decision maker. It's just millions of individuals who want to get drugs for cheap who are the decision makers, and so you can't have a single person who makes your stock go south. Anyways. The tailwinds. Let's keep going. I'm a big fan of Tony Seba on this channel. This is Tony Seba's research. 9x the average energy that a home needs just on the roof. And if you start putting panels on the side of the house, as opposed to siding, or if we move to a direction where a house siding is going to be smart siding, you could get to potentially 18x that the average home's price, and thanks to China dumping solar panels on the world, for government investment, and I don't know what they do in China to make them so cheap. But I had made a video about that demonstration on the channel 2 years back, where I showed you that actually solar panels were cheaper than plywood. Like if you want to buy the expensive, nice plywood at the Home Depot, it's actually cheaper for the same size than a solar panel from China, than a cheap solar panel in China. I'm sure it's still the case. Well, maybe not anymore with the tariffs, but still the tariffs are 30%, so it's probably still pretty close to the case. So that's the point. Solar roofs make so much sense. Here's another point. The total, I don't know if you've shopped for replacing a roof lately, but if you have your big house, your standard American house, the 3,000 square foot house, it depends if it's a little cheaper if it's a 2-story, but if it's like a ranch home, a big ranch home with a huge roof space, with a nice slanting to it, like try to get a quote to replace a roof. That's very often between 20 and 30K to replace a roof. So solar getting embedded solar, which I think is also going to be a big tailwind. Getting a solar roof where it does the function of both protecting your roof and also earning energy. That's becoming particularly competitive if you're facing a total roof teardown and having to reshingle it. So there's a lot of potential in the long term for this. Okay, then, and this is the biggest tailwind. I'm not going to talk much about this topic for a different video, but the question is, how much do you think electricity is going to cost in 2030 in the age of AI? My guess is that local electricity prices are going to go through the roof because that power is going to be outbid by data centers. Data centers, because they're going to make so much money with AI, they're going to have no issue paying 50, 60, 70 cents a kilowatt hour, which means that electricity from the grid is going to shift towards sending electricity to the data centers, or the data centers rising the price of electricity for everybody else. And of course, if you live in a world where electricity is 70 cents a kilowatt hour, then all of a sudden the return on investment of a solar roof is insane. Now, right now, electricity, it depends on your part of the world, but in Texas right now, electricity went down. It's quite cheap, and that's thanks to the price of oil and gas. And if you make electricity with oil and gas, you can get in a situation where electricity is quite cheap. So it all depends where you live. But your local electricity, in my view, is going to go up because it's going to be outbid for data centers. And then all of a sudden, decentralized electricity, every home with a solar roof producing their own electricity, all of a sudden, that's going to change things, and I think that's going to be much more compelling. Anyways, moving on from that story, valuation. Let's talk about valuation. That's a tailwind because there's a lot of value investors out there. Now, it's a value stock. It's not a growth stock anymore. And I'm a growth stock snob. I'm a revenue growth addict. I want super high revenue growth, super high growth. Enphase, unfortunately, used to be that way. It's not that way anymore. So I'm staying away. But Enphase today is in a situation kind of like a PayPal, where the growth's gone, but you're looking at an 11x next year's EBITDA. I didn't go into the details, but that's pretty darn cheap if you ask me, for the leader in the field. This is the leader in the field. This is probably the best company in the field. So declining growth is a red flag for me, but there's a lot of value investors who are all about just looking at the EBITDA. And of course, growth could come back. And I'll conclude with the final tailwind, cyclicality. This is a very cyclical sector. We are clearly in the valley of despair. We might go deeper into that valley of despair. I don't know. I don't think now is quite the right time to enter that stock, given all the question marks. The Fed being the biggest question mark. But solar is a very cyclical industry. It has always been a cyclical industry. And in my view, this is not the death of solar. So anyways, and how would I re-enter this trade if I were to? And I'm not doing that just yet, but if I were to, I would likely re-enter this trade via leaps, and I would pick the leaps, which is exactly my exit price. So my exit price was, anyways, it was like in the 70, it was 73. So I guess I put it a little higher. But anyways, the point is, with leaps, you're very easily in a 3x your money zone within a year if this stock goes back to where it was trading. I find the leaps pretty interesting on this stock if you buy them at the money. But anyways, that's up to each investor's risk tolerance here. But yeah, if the stock goes back to where it was, you could really have outsized return with leaps. But that's based on your risk preference. And the problem, of course, with this one is the timing. That's the problem, the timing. When are things going to get better? I don't know, but I would venture out and say they're probably going to get a little worse before they get better. So anyways, this was not financial advice, not investment advice. This is only entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.